Alright everyone, today's build video is about a counter predator classified build. Now before getting started though and going over all the individual stat points, I want to make it very clear I am designing builds that are not 6 pieces of classified gear. Maybe at some point I'll cover those, put them all in one video or something, but right now a lot of people don't have all of their classified gear, they don't have 6-piece builds, and I want to create builds that can counter them or provide you an edge against some of those classified builds that have flexible and accessible gear. So you don't have to use this exact combination. There's a lot of flexibility here. It's designed to offer maximum damage and a lot of different tools to counter, in particular today, Predator's Mark with this particular build, and something that can be accessible to a wide variety of players, maybe if you can't get that last piece. I'll go over all the different pieces of gear, all the stats on them. I'll go over the weapon. I'll talk more about how it's so flexible, how you can interchange things, and then I'll kick it over to a little bit of gameplay after I discuss all the key parts of the build. But it's good to be back, and let's get started. The first key component is the Ninja Bike Messenger Bag, though this isn't super hard to acquire. I know a lot of people are chasing the house right now. Exotics can be hard to acquire, but there's a lot of different ways that you can get a chance at it, and a lot of people have the Ninja Bike Bag. So it's not something that's going to weigh down the build as much as having 6 particular pieces of classified gear. I have rolled this as electronics. You do want one piece of electronics to make this exact build. You don't have to if you're switching out certain gun talents, but if you're trying to follow this point for point, then you do need electronics, not necessarily on the backpack, but one piece of electronics. You have the Ninja Bike talent. That's what we're going to be using to complete the different gear set bonuses. For a major attribute, you want health. There's nothing that can compete with that. On the backpack, health is probably the best thing that you can possibly roll. Pound for pound, it's about 500, a little less than that main stat of health. So it's the equivalent of having 500 extra stamina by rolling that as a major attribute. For a minor attribute, ammo capacity is great. But you don't really need it. As long as you have one piece of ammo capacity, you'll have enough in the dark zone to kind of do your own thing and not run out too frequently. But health as a major attribute, most important thing. Next up is the Final Measure gloves. Now it doesn't have to be Final Measure as gloves in particular. It can be any one piece of Final Measure to pair with the Ninja Bike bag that will give you the bonus of 2-piece Final Measure, which is 25% EDR. That's key for countering Predator's Mark. It also has some other side effects of helping counter grenades, etc. But primarily speaking about Predator's Mark, that 25% EDR is very, very good. Again, it doesn't have to be classified, and it doesn't have to be gloves that are Final Measure. It can be any piece that's Final Measure, and it doesn't need to be classified. It just means more main stats if it is a classified variant type. Now for major attributes, you want skill haste, absolutely. Critical hit chance, sure, and assault rifle damage. The key ones are skill haste and assault rifle damage. If you don't have the crit chance, if you have something else, it's not really going to impact you that much. This isn't a crit build. So you do need skill haste though, and assault rifle damage. Those are the best 2 attributes for the majors on the gloves. And then for firearms, just it doesn't matter if this is firearms, but the key composition of the build is going to be 4 pieces of firearms and 1 piece of electronics. So maybe your gloves are electronics, but then your backpack would be firearms to maintain that 4-to-1 ratio. Next up is the holster, which is pretty straightforward on most builds, but there's a little bit of flexibility here in our situation. Holsters don't roll as much health as a major attribute as many other pieces, so it's not as essential to roll it there because it doesn't equate to the same amount of main stat in stamina. I've rolled critical hit chance here. This is left over from a previous Predator's Mark build where crit chance was a main component of that. Classified or not, again, does not matter. It just means more main stats if it is. But critical hit chance, it can be that or health, doesn't really matter. You can also roll reload speed if you'd like to, but personally, critical hit chance, it feeds into the whole damage basis of this build in particular, so I've opted for that. Next up, we have Banshee Shadow knee pads, and what we're going for from the Banshee set, while coupling it with the Ninja Bike Messenger bag, is the 3-piece bonus of 10% damage to targets out of cover. Now, I'm not going to go into the math behind it, but I believe I did a quick skim over of the patch notes and watched some content. 10% damage to targets out of cover is still multiplicative. It's not additive, which means it's more effective than simply adding 10% like a lot of other abilities or bonuses do. So the 3-piece Banshee is very, very powerful. That's what we're going for from the set. You do want firearms, maintaining the 4-to-1 ratio of firearms to electronics. And for major attributes, there's a little bit of flexibility. If you want to have more resilience to weapon damage, specifically bullet and gun damage, then you'll roll health here. But if you are trying to counter only Predator's Mark and really rip away the potential that bleed has, then you'll roll EDR. I won't go into the math again, but behind EDR, it functions much the way that armor used to. Armor was more effective with each percentage point after 50. EDR is the same way. So once you're past 50% EDR, percentage points become more and more valuable. So this 8% is good if you're going to really take a chunk out of the grenade damage and really stop Predator's Mark bleed right in its tracks. But you can swap that out for health and it won't make much of a difference. Damage to elites, really good to have there. Burn resistance, really good. Disrupt resistance, also very good. You don't want to be disrupted because you're going to be using skills frequently. And burn resistance, well, who likes being lit on fire? You definitely want that. And damage to elites is actually a really big bonus when you're fighting most of the NPCs in the Dark Zone or in any other situation. But this is geared a little bit towards Dark Zone, PvP, with a little bit of a hybrid nature in PvE, so get damage to elites there. Now we have a Predator's Mark mask, and what we're getting from this, since we have two pieces of Predator's Mark, being the mask and the holster, we're getting 8% assault rifle damage as well as the two piece of 10% reload. Now, this is not essential. You can swap this out. Predator's Mark and having the 3-piece bonus is just kind of me maximizing the damage, but you can swap this out for 2 pieces of Tactician's Authority if you would like to. That will give you more survivability. It will give you more skill power. It'll let you pop your skills more frequently, and it's something that can really help you in a lot of situations. So having 2 pieces of Predator's Mark is not essential. You'll still do really good damage, but having 8% assault rifle damage on top of all the other bonuses that we have really put us in the ballpark of a shredding DPS build. Now for a major attribute, you want EDR. This is a firearms roll to protect the 4-to-1 ratio of firearms to electronics. And then minor attributes, damage to elites. So I can really take down any NPCs that are in the fight. I can use this in a lot of different circumstances. And EDR, this is a large chunk and it's on top of everything else. So it is quite valuable. I don't have a classified Predator's Mark mask, but if you do, then you would add more main stats to the build. Last up is the Banshee Shadow chest piece. It is a firearms roll and it does help us unlock the 3-piece, which we already talked about. And for major attributes, it's pretty strict here. You want EDR and health. Health equates to about 500 main stat of stamina because it's over 15,000. And the way stamina scales now at a 30-to-1, 15,000 health is still a very good bonus. And then EDR, that's a large chunk and you need that to get it well over the 50% value, which makes it so effective. So major attributes, very inflexible. Minor attributes, if you have ammo capacity on your backpack, then you don't really need it on your chest piece, but ammo capacity is just it's a quality of life improvement. Helps you go through a lot more landmarks or a lot more PvP encounters without running out, so good to have it there. Next up is our weapon, which is an LVOAC, which I've had for a very long time. And in my eyes, this is a perfect god roll. If you can get something like this, that's great. If you can't though, get something even similar and it will be very effective. The damage, I've optimized this, so the damage is super, super high at 23,000. RPM is very high. This has kind of been a staple in the division for a very long time. And the talents are responsive, competent, and unforgiving. Now, it would be better to have competent in the 3rd slot, and then you would have the added security of not having to roll very high on your electronics roll, or you could even pull out your piece of electronics gear altogether. But because competent isn't in the 3rd slot, I have 1 piece of electronics gear to make sure that it's active. Responsive is also multiplicative damage. So this, on top of the fact that we have the Banshee bonus of another 10% multiplicative, means that we're stacking damage on top of itself in a really efficient way. Competent, more percentage weapon damage, and then unforgiving, a very strong talent, especially when you're face trading, which a lot of people do, especially on console. This build is good on both PC and console, but I play on console primarily, so that's where I kind of focused all of my attention when crafting the build. For weapon attachments, it's pretty straightforward. You just want high magazine size, which is always going to be the case, and then you want critical hit damage and critical hit chance wherever you can find it. You can go for reload speed on your underbarrel, but that is really going to inflate your sheet DPS rather than your actual damage per second while you're firing your gun. So go for critical hit damage, critical hit chance wherever possible, and then the highest possible magazine size on that magazine. For my skills, I've opted to run Booster Shot, though you can change that out in favor of Overdose. It has a lot more healing, but it also has a higher cooldown, which means you can't proc Competent on your weapon as often, and it also does not give bonus damage or bonus damage mitigation. So Booster Shot is the best choice in my eyes, though it is a little bit interchangeable if you want more survivability. Though it's arguable if there's more survivability in reality because you have the damage mitigation. Outside of that though, your second skill is going to be the immunizer, and you're not going to use this as a traditional immunizer. You're simply going to drop it and then instantly detonate it for the overheal. Another reason is this is a second cleanse. Everyone has access to medkits against Predator's Mark to cleanse the bleed. The immunizer is also another form of cleansing that bleed. So it just means the maximum amount of tools in your arsenal to counter Predator's Mark, and also it is a good chunk of healing. So this is the way that we're compensating for having most of our stats in firearms having high damage by keeping ourselves alive, not with a base health pool, but with our skills. For talents, I recommend in a group triage because you have two different skills which can proc it, but also it's important to know about the support station that the burst heal that it gets from detonation does not proc triage. The only way that a support station will trigger the bonus 15% cooldown reduction is by having a heal over time tick on an ally. So keep that in mind when you're using it, though it is still recommended in a group setting since you do have two heals. If you're by yourself on the move, the 15% mitigation is amazing. So solo on the move instead of triage. I highly recommend Precision since you don't have a pulse. This will give you bonus damage. It is very, very powerful. And then I recommend Critical Save. Absolutely, everybody needs this. Critical Save, Medkit in the last health bar, damage resistance 20%. That is phenomenal in PvP and PvE alike. It will save your life. And then Strike Back. If you are in a squad, you can swap out Strike Back to Combat Medic, but that's only if you're in a squad of like 3 or 4 people. Then you get added value for the medkit and everyone should use it. But if you're by yourself or even in a duo, maybe Strike Back is better. Since you do have triage though in a squad, Strike Back becomes a little bit more flexible. Popping over to our character sheet for a couple of seconds, this is one of the main focuses of the build, EDR. You have 67% exotic damage resilience, which means that you are mitigating more than 2/3 of any grenade damage or any bleed damage that's put on you by Predator. This is very effective, though it can be, brought down a little bit. You want to be a good chunk over 50%, and that's what this build is successful at doing. So EDR extremely high. You can shrug off grenades, and it does have a lot of added value in PvP because not only are you going to be fighting Predator's Mark, everybody throws frag grenades, and this build does have a lot of strengths. If you can walk right through a grenade and not have it kill you, you can sometimes surprise the enemy because they're not dealing as much burst damage as they needed in order to get the kill, and you can really catch them on their back foot, catch them off guard. Now, I don't have an overabundance of footage here, and you're definitely not going to be one versus the entire server, killing everyone in the dark zone at all. That's not what the build is for, but it's a very effective counter to Predator's Mark in particular, and it does have extremely high damage. Even on body shots, you're doing a lot of damage. A lot of percentage weapon damage bonuses are stacking on top of each other. You have Competent, you have Unforgiving, you have Responsive, which is multiplicative. You have damage to targets out of cover from Banshee. You have the Predator's Mark 8%. You have damage on your gloves. You have Precision, which gives you effectively a base pulse. You have all these things stacking together to create phenomenal damage. And then you also do have the survivability tools. You have 3 different heals. You have a med kit. You have critical save. You have booster shot with bonus mitigation. You also have your support station, which is an extra cleanse and can also give you a burst heal as well as your teammates. It is a build that has a lot of versatility. Now, it's not going to beat everyone out there. This is not a build where you can just slap it on and be invincible and destroy everyone. But it's the type of build that I want to create. It's a counter build to Predator's Mark. It does have a phenomenal amount of damage. And if you have this on your loadout bar, you will be able to, in certain circumstances, switch to it and have a definitive edge against Predator's Mark in particular, but also a couple of other builds. If someone's spamming grenades and really is going for those grenade throws, this build will completely negate the value that they have, the burst damage that they have. And it's not held up by optimal range. It does have very decent range and can do a lot of damage from further away. And overall, it's a really well-rounded choice in terms of countering a specific build, but also being able to perform in PvE and maybe kill NPCs, etc. But I'll wrap it up there, guys. Thank you for watching. I will be producing more of these counter builds. There'll be much more in the series. I'll be trying to innovate more builds as we go along. I will cover the classified gear, but maybe all in one video condensed. I'm not really sure yet. Thank you for watching again. Check out the links down below. Check out our new website 2.0 with the forums, with social clubs, with a calendar, etc. I'll be sending out more information on that soon. And as always, thank you for watching and have a nice night.